Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. And once again, it is Friday, and you know what that means. That means we are into FOMO Friday. We don't want you to have that fear of missing out. So what we do is we bring you the stories of the week that we think that you should know about, or at least have heard about anyway. And because you're not listening to propaganda media, you depend on us to do that, and we really appreciate that. Getting right into things, the federal government is shut down as of at the time of this recording, and I record this on Thursday night. The federal government is still shut down, and when I say shut down, it's sort of shut down. 75% of federal workers are still working because they are considered essential workers. That's 75%. But why is there a so-called shutdown of the federal government then? Well, Republicans just want to spend the same amount of money as has already been allocated, and they just want to go on for another 3 months or so on the same pace. Yes, we should spend less. There's no two ways around that. But that debate is for later. Democrats want to spend, get this, $1.5 trillion more money to give to illegals health care. That's what they want to do, and that's what they're holding up. And you may say, well, because Republicans hold both houses. Yes, but it takes 60 votes in the Senate to approve this thing, and they only have like 53, so they need 7 Democrats. And the first vote, I think they got 4, if I remember right. So there are some that are saying, yeah, we need to just not do this charade. But anyway. If you watch CNN this week, you probably saw clips of host Caitlin Collins fact-checking, and I put that in air quotes, fact-checking Republican lawmakers on the government shutdown. These exchanges follow the same pattern. The Republican says that Democrats should shut the government down because they want to give free health care to illegal immigrants. And Collins tells them that federal Medicaid funding can't go to illegals. They start talking about Obamacare, and she says that illegal immigrants have never been eligible for Obamacare subsidies. Here's the problem. Collins is wrong. Republicans seem like they're talking in circles because this is an incredibly complex issue, and Democrats are trying to make it even more complicated. Obviously, Collins, like Democrats and other members of the media, is talking about what the law says, and Republicans are talking about what actually happens, the reality, right? The Republicans are living in reality here. It's true that federal Medicaid dollars can't go to illegals. And it's true that illegals aren't eligible for Obamacare subsidies. But it's also true that federal Medicaid dollars do go to illegal immigrants, and illegal immigrants do enroll in taxpayer-subsidized Medicare plans. Facts are stubborn things, as the Daily Wire puts it. And the fact is that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the OBBBA, imposed safeguards to stop illegal immigrants from improperly accessing federal health care benefits. The fact is, the Democrats' funding bill would roll back those safeguards. That's the shutdown fight in a nutshell, right there. Collins' point, it seems, is that while states can spend Medicaid money on illegals, the federal government is legally barred from doing so. And that is true, but money is fungible. This is the reality part, right? Money is fungible, which means that once those federal Medicaid dollars hit state bank accounts, it's off to the races. Just look at California, for instance, which has proudly expanded its Medicaid program to cover illegal aliens. Technically, it must cover illegal enrollees with state dollars. But California devised a clever money laundering scheme wherein it taxes healthcare providers to fund its Medicaid program. The more it raises, provider taxes, the more it gets from the federal government. The result? Well, over $5 billion in healthcare for illegal aliens. You see how it works? The OBBBA repealed an emergency 90% Medicaid match rate for illegal aliens. Democrats' funding bill would bring it back, putting taxpayers on the hook for the majority of the costs of illegals enrolling in Medicaid. Also, during COVID, President Joe Biden signed legislation that expanded eligibility for Obamacare subsidies to those making up to, get this, 400% above the federal poverty line. That means these taxpayer-funded subsidies, meant to help the poorest Americans afford Obamacare plans, were available to people making over $100,000 a year. Yep. The legislation also made Obamacare free for people making between 100% and 150% of the federal poverty level. Let's set aside the fact that the federal government needs to spend billions of dollars paying for Americans to enroll in ostensibly affordable, again in air quotes, healthcare plans. Blowing open these doors has also led to a shocking surge in fraud. So more than 6 million people got free health care for which they were not eligible. All told, improper enrollees accounted for 26% of Obamacare population in 2025. This cost taxpayers more than $35 billion last year. Yeah, so that is what this government shutdown is all about. And I don't think it's going to last real long, but we'll keep our eye on it, right? There is good news on the war front this week, by the way, and the war with Isreal and Hamas. Israel has agreed to a peace deal agreement in their war with Hamas, and President Trump negotiated that agreement, and to Israel's credit, there were several compromises in it from their end, but they agreed anyway. The one caveat is that if Hamas does not agree to the deal, then we in the United States will give Israel our full support to take Hamas out. And guess what? Yeah, it looks like that is the route that Hamas has chosen to take. From a series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this. According to the BBC, the head of a Hamas military wing in Gaza told mediators from Egypt and Qatar that Hamas will not agree to the peace deal put forth by President Trump. Al-Din al-Haddad is thought to believe the plan was designed to finish Hamas. It definitely said that they needed to not be in control of the Gaza Strip and things. But whether the group attempts, accepts it or not, and that's what they believe that either way, they're kind of washed up, right? And so they're basically saying the fight is on. The BBC reported this, adding that Hamas know that if they release the Israeli hostages, which again was part of the deal, they had to release the hostages, they will lose any leverage that they have. Now, Hamas military wing holds greater sway over proceedings, given that it holds the 48 hostages remaining in Gaza, only like 20 of whom are thought to be alive, by the way, even according to Arab News. Israel's Can News reported that Is-al-Din al-Haddad, that he led a guerrilla warfare strategy in northern Gaza. And in the past, the head of the Palestinian Affairs Desk at Can News reported that al-Haddad had been marked as the successor to Mohammed Deif. Now, Deif, one of Israel's most wanted terrorists for decades, was the architect of numerous terrorist attacks, including suicide bombings, kidnappings, and rocket attacks against Israel citizens and soldiers. He was responsible for Hamas military planning, weapon development, and tunnel warfare. And he was also a central figure in the October 7th, 2023 massacre, which saw, of course, Hamas fighters breach into Israeli territory, killing and kidnapping civilians. And he was killed himself in an Israeli air attack in July of last year. So anyway, looks like we're going to go full support for Israel here, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. We'll keep an eye on how Hamas is doing through that. Another bit. Speaking of genocides and things, a lot of people like to say that Israel is conducting a genocide in Gaza, and this they don't have a clue what genocide is. Let me explain what genocide is. Brad Brandon of Daily Wire, he's a founder and CEO of Across Nigeria. And this is what he wrote. He said, political satirist and self-described liberal Bill Maher, long and outspoken critic of Christianity, recently caused a firestorm when he put a searing spotlight on the mass murders of Christians in Nigeria, where more Christians are killed than anywhere else in the world. During the September 26th episode of his HBO show Real Time with Bill Maher, the comedian pointed out the atrocities perpetuated against Nigerian Christians, saying, quote, "They've killed over 100,000 since 2009. They've burned 18,000 churches," referring to the violence of Islamists in Nigeria, such as the Boko Haram. We've talked about this on the podcast before. It's such a sad thing. And in his comments, he criticized both the media and pro-Hamas protesters, stating, "This is so much more of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. Where are kids protesting this?" Surprisingly and thankfully, his audience erupted into vigorous applause, and his remarks quickly went viral on social media this week, triggering podcasts and talk shows to highlight the mass murders. In fact, I wanted to bring you this, and it's only like 47 seconds. I wanted you to hear what he had to say.
Nigeria, I mean, the fact that this issue has not gotten on people's radar.
Right, no one's talking about it.
It's pretty amazing. If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck. You are in a bubble. Not, and again, I'm not a Christian, but they are systematically killing the Christians in Nigeria. They've killed over 100,000 since 2009. They've burned 18,000 churches. This is so much more. These are their Islamists, Boko Haram. This is so much more of a genocide attempt than what is going on in Gaza. They are literally attempting to wipe out the Christian population of an entire country. Where are the kids protesting this?
Thank you. Thank you. Because no one will talk about it, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the clip going viral. And Brad says that I now spend most of my life living in northern Nigeria where this genocide is happening, and I know firsthand the reality of the gruesome violence against Christians. I have even carried the bodies of my friends who have been murdered. So I was thrilled to see Maher take valuable airtime to highlight the horrific reality of Nigeria's Christians' genocide. One of Maher's most poignant comments came when he stated, quote, "The fact that this issue has not gotten on people's radar is pretty amazing. If you don't know what's going on in Nigeria, your media sources suck. I like that one too. And you're in a bubble. So it causes one to ask the very question implied by Maher. Why don't more people know about what's going on in Nigeria? Well, maybe they don't listen to my podcast. I don't know. Anyway, the United States government, media, and even the American church seem to be silent on this issue, though. And indeed, over 100,000 Christians have been slaughtered since 2009. By July of this year, 7,000 more Christians were murdered in cold blood. And currently, 30 Christians are killed every day in Nigeria. 30. Now, thousands of churches are being destroyed as well, and hundreds of pastors are abducted, and millions of people are left starving. The silence, though, is deafening. An abundance of attention has been given to Gaza, Ukraine, and Iran. So why is virtually no attention being given to the thousands of Christians who are being murdered every year in Nigeria and the atrocities of Boko Haram and ISWA? One possible answer is that it may be much easier to bury one's head in the sand than to deal with the problem. That has been the approach of recent administrations in the United States, of course. In 2021, the Biden administration inexplicably removed Nigeria from the State Department's country of particular concern list. Can you imagine? When the State Department offered its report on religious freedom the following year, Nigeria was not even mentioned in that report. Outrageously, at the same time, Christians were being killed by the thousands, and the genocide was in full swing. President Biden even ignored a resolution from the House Foreign Affairs Committee calling for immediate intervention in Nigeria. With that, a precedent was set, and the United States government refused even to acknowledge that the problem existed. Yeah. But it is yet to be seen if the Trump administration will recognize this genocide or continue to ignore it as well. In the media, there is a dark pattern concerning genocides. During World War II, many German citizens knew what was happening in the death camps. Although some reports of the mass killing of Jews were being circulated in the American media, it was not given nearly the attention it deserved. But rather than blow the whistle and investigate the claims, the American media remained largely silent. And the same thing happened with the killing fields of Cambodia and the Rwandan genocide. During both events, the United States and the world stayed quiet and did nothing of consequence. The genocide is the deliberate and planned attempt to destroy a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. According to the UN, what we learned from history is that genocides can last for decades without shocking the conscience of the world. And while the killing is happening, very few speak out. Ironically, when the genocides are over, we make movies about them. It's far easier to deal with the aftermath than it is to face the actual atrocities themselves. The most shameful has been the silence of the American church, though. We are the wealthiest and most influential nation in the world. It has the resources, the reach, and the influence to raise awareness and compel the faith community to get involved. The American church has the means to sway people, lawmakers, and the media, and urge them to take action. Unfortunately, it has followed suit and remained oddly quiet. The Bible teaches us that it is our job to bring light to the hidden things of darkness. That's Ephesians 5:11-14. And if we refuse, how can we possibly expect anyone else to act? He says, I'm grateful that Bill Maher was courageous enough to speak out on the Nigerian genocide, prompting a worldwide conversation. And it shows us that one liberal, atheist comedian who makes a 47-second comment, what that can do. Imagine the impact if all of us did the same. And that's why I wanted to bring that to you today. I know we've talked about it before, but it definitely had to come out again, particularly since of the comments that Bill Maher made. And in a bit of shocking news, the pro-life advocates are demanding answers from the White House after the FDA approved a new abortion pill in a shocking decision earlier this week. The FDA on Tuesday gave approval for Avidia Solutions to distribute mifepristone, a drug that is used to end the life of an unborn child in up to 63% of all abortions now. After a pregnant woman takes the mifepristone, her unborn child is cut off from the nutrients it needs to survive and basically is effectively starved to death. A different drug is then taken to induce the labor and expel the deceased baby from the mother. But the fatal drug has been increasingly available after the Biden administration allowed it to be mailed to doctors. Leftist activists shipped the drug illegally across the country with impunity. Nothing was done. And Senator Josh Hawley called the approval shocking and said that he had lost faith in the FDA leadership. Quote, "This is shocking. FDA has just approved another chemical abortion drug when the evidence shows chemical abortion drugs are dangerous and even deadly for the mother. And of course, 100% lethal for the child." That's what Hawley wrote on X. Quote, "FDA had promised to do a top to bottom safety review of the chemical abortion drug. But instead, they just green-lighted new versions of it for distribution. I have lost confidence in the leadership at FDA," he added. And Representative Mark Harris, who's a Republican from North Carolina, he also questioned the move by saying, "Wow, the FDA just approved a generic version of the abortion pill, which is a drug that ends the baby's life 100% of the time and harms mothers. The FDA announced a new safety study just days ago. So why this new move now?" Well, only two other drug companies, the Danco Labs and Gen Biopro, were previously approved to distribute the life-ending drug. The FDA wrote to Avidia Solutions on September 30th that it had concluded that adequate information has been presented to demonstrate that the drug meets the requirements for approval, is how they put it. Well, Avidia Solutions says on its website that the medical abortion care is rife with medically unnecessary restrictions and social stigma in the United States, and that it believes that all people should have access to safe, affordable, high-quality, effective, and compassionate abortion care, regardless of their race, sex, gender, age, sexuality, income, or where they live. That's their stance. Well, in response to questions about the drug approval, the Health and Human Services Communications Director Andrew Nixon told the Daily Wire that the FDA, quote, "has very limited discretion in deciding whether to approve a generic drug. By law, the Secretary of Health and Human Services must approve an application if it demonstrates that the generic drug is identical to the brand name drug," unquote. So Nixon added that applicants for the generic drugs do not need to submit independent evidence proving safety or efficiency. The decision is already drawing backlash from pro-life advocates who have long warned about the dangers of the drug. Kelsey Pritchard, the director of state affairs for the SBA Pro-Life America, called the decision reckless, saying, "This does nothing to help and fix the problem that we have with abortion drugs and mail-order abortion drugs, and instead puts a cheap drug on the market so that more unborn lives are taken and more women and girls end up in the ER." Well, in celebrity news this week, we got a couple things for you. Following days of swirling speculation, Nicole Kidman has made it official. She's divorcing her husband of almost 2 decades, country singer-star Keith Urban. The petition for divorce was filed in Davidson County, Tennessee, citing irreconcilable differences, and neither Kidman nor Urban has issued public statements about their split. But the tabloids have been working overtime to speak to unnamed insiders in an attempt to figure out what went wrong and when. And the sources say the two have been living apart since the beginning of the summer, and the divorce is not surprising to the power couple's internal circle of friends. So, after 2 decades, they are done. And we also have conservatives, conservationists. There we go. That's easy for me to say. Conservationist Jane Goodall has died at the age of 91. The British primatologist and anthropologist was best known for her work studying chimpanzees, if you remember, which began in 1960. Now, Goodall remained active in the scientific community until the day she died, and was on a speaking tour in California at the time of her passing. Born in London in 1934, Goodall grew up in England with a love for animals, which was spurred in part by her father buying her a stuffed toy chimpanzee named Jubilee, believe it or not. She traveled to Africa in 1957 and later met anthropologist Louis Leakey, who saw promise in her curiosity and invited her to Tanzania to study wild chimpanzees. And in July of 1960, she was 26 at the time. Goodall established a field camp at Gombe Stream National Park, where she pioneered immersive observation and discovered that chimpanzees possess the ability to use tools, hunt, and form social bonds. If you remember right, she basically just started living with these chimpanzees, which hadn't been done, I don't believe, to that point. Over the decades, Goodall became a fervent not conservative, but conservationist. No, I keep wanting to call her conservative. She was definitely not that. She founded the Jane Goodall Institute in 1977 and launched Roots and Shoots, a youth-oriented environmental movement. She was named a UN Messenger of Peace in 2002 and has received multiple awards, including the Templeton Prize and Presidential Medal of Freedom, which was presented by Joe Biden on January of this year, right at the end of his reign, I guess you could say. Goodall her later years were devoted to conservation and climate activism and youth outreach. Goodall was married twice and had one child, and she was raised Christian and maintained a belief in a higher power, even as her scientific colleagues were atheists or agnostic. She had critical words for organized religion, choosing instead to embrace a looser approach to spirituality. So, unfortunately, it doesn't look like a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. But here's the quote. It said, I realized that my experience in the forest, my understanding of the chimpanzees, had given me a new perspective. This is what she wrote in one of her books, the one called Reason for Hope. Quote, I was utterly convinced there was a great spiritual power that we call God, Allah or Brahma, although I knew equally certainly that my finite mind could not comprehend its form or nature. So I found, and one of the reasons I did want to bring this to you is that I found it rather interesting. Now, here's somebody who lived out with the chimpanzees, out away from people and that type of thing. And she found that yes, there is a God. I mean, there, even out there, you can see his handiwork. And she had to acknowledge that there was a higher power. Now, she, obviously didn't come to know the Lord. It doesn't look like, but But she had to at least acknowledge that, yes, there is a God out there. All right, so I know things have been a little bit heavy this week. Let's end on kind of a weird kind of note, can we? The legacy coffee brand Maxwell House is changing their name for the first time in 133 years to reflect the changing landscape of home ownership. This is what they just announced. Again, hey, this is not the Babylon Bee, okay? The coffee retail is rebranding to Maxwell Apartment. I kid you not. I'm totally serious. This is what they said. They're doing this for a 12-month lease offer. The press release detailed the change, mentioned that almost 1/3 of Americans are renting smaller apartments rather than purchasing full-size homes. Quote, 2/3 of Americans adults drink coffee every day, which can add up quickly, especially these days. This is what Holly Ramsden, head of coffee North America at the Kraft Heinz Company, said in a statement. Quote, Maxwell House believes no one should have to go without great tasting coffee, and Maxwell Apartments delivers the same delicious taste people know and love at a value that celebrates all our fans are doing to make smart choices in their lives. The announcement further stated that the brand would continue selling great tasting, affordable coffee because we're living during a time where value matters now more than ever. The promotion is being touted as a way for consumers to stock up on coffee and save on cafe runs, which they claim lead up to about $1,000 in savings a year. Of course, social media users are mocking the marketing ploy, and pointing out that the brand was named after Maxwell House Hotel in Nashville, where it first gained popularity, not after an actual residence. One had the same reaction as I did. I can't believe that's not the Babylon Bee article. Others pointed out that this is the latest in a string of questionable marketing decisions from major brands, including Cracker Barrel, major misstep over the summer. And now we know where the marketing team that gave us the new logo and decor for Cracker Barrel went. Yeah, and I like this one. It says, "Hey Americans, we know most of you can't afford homes, so we thought our coffee should be rebranded to reflect your misfortune, like salt in a wound." So anyway, just kind of some light humor there. Again, it's real, but it's kind of funny at the same time. So anyway, I would love to hear from you on our stories of the week. Of course, you can do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Please go ahead and go to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and like and share. That'd be awesome. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Organite Communications.